It's Thursday the 8th of May 2025 and today I'm in a part of Bristol called Bedminster. Now, Bedminster is on the south side of the city and this is where I lived in Bristol after I lived in Whitehall. So the street I'm now walking along, Avonlea Road, is where I lived, and I lived in one of the houses here. From Avonlea Road, I walked along British Road as far as South Street Park. I'd been living in my mum's house in Whitehall in Bristol since 1984, and by 1991 I met a new group of friends. And the following year, in 1992, I actually ended up moving in with two of those friends, and we shared a house here in Bedminster, and that was the house on Avonlea Road. Emerging onto West Street, I followed it to St John Street, where I turned right to walk along it. So here we are then, another of Bristol's green spaces. Yeah. St John's Churchyard. Okay. Yeah, I like living in Bedminster. Obviously a long time ago now, but I was in Bedminster between 1992 and 1995. And like Whitehall, I either got the bus into the city centre where I worked or walked. But yeah, it was a nice area of Bristol and I was very happy here actually. It was quite weird when I first moved to Bedminster because that was the first time I'd actually left home. I mean, I was 26 when I left Mum's house, so that's quite an old age to be leaving home, really, isn't it? But I suppose I just got comfortable at Mum's house and saw no reason to move out. But yeah, I met these friends of mine and they were living in a shared house, and then I ended up moving in with them. So it was great, and it was a good way of actually moving on and sort of like being a bit more independent, really, in my life. Crossing Malago Road, I passed under a railway bridge and began to climb Windmill Hill. This is a nice steep hill. This road is called Windmill Hill, although this actual part of Bedminster is called Windmill Hill. Yeah, another nice part. I love all these multicoloured houses, they're great, aren't they? Okay, just to the top of here then. Windmill Hill Community Centre. And St Mike's Church over there. At the end of Somerset Terrace, I went through a gate and entered one of Bristol's largest city parks. And this is the wonderful Victoria Park. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, Victoria Park is an absolutely wonderful bit of parkland in Bristol. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, look at that. A long time since I walked through Victoria Park. Even when I lived in Bedminster all those years ago, I didn't come to Victoria Park much. Well, the friends that I moved in with in Bedminster, it was Richard and Nigel. Now, you may recognise the names if you're long-term followers of my YouTube channel. But Richard and Nigel were some of the people I'd met the previous year in 1991. So I met Richard, Nigel, I met Michael, and I met Martin, I met Jenny, and I'll talk about those people now. In late 1991, when I met all those people, we just clicked. We just really got on well, and Richard and Nigel and Martin, at the end of 1991, start of 92, they ended up moving into a shared house in Avonlea Road in Bedminster. Now, after 6 months, Martin was moving out because he then met his wife-to-be at that time. So he moved in with her, so there was a spare room in that shared house. So I took the opportunity, and I was offered by Richard and Nigel if I'd like Martin's old room. So that's why I moved in. Oh yeah, it was fantastic. To say, it was quite weird finally leaving Mum's house after all those years at the age of 26. But I knew I did the right thing because, as I say, I got on with Richard and Nigel really well, and I still saw Martin when he moved out. Martin was great. And Michael, he lived in another part of South Bristol. He was living in a place called Withywood at the time. And he used to regularly come round to our house in Avonlea Road, so we never had a day where we didn't have any visitors, really. And there was Jenny. She lived down the road from us as well, so she regularly used to pop in and have a cup of tea with us. So it was great. I absolutely loved living at Avonlea Road with Richard and Nigel. We had some fantastic times. I'm leaving Victoria Park again now. There's another gate at this corner, and I should be walking along a couple of roads and climbing up again in a minute. But it's been lovely walking through Victoria Park again after all these years. Another of Bristol's finest green spaces. Walking along Park Avenue, I reached St John's Lane and then made my way to Sylvia Avenue to begin another climb. Sylvia Avenue is one of Bristol's attractive tree-lined avenues. Lovely. So, even though it's a bit of a climb, it's only a short climb, I think. Aha, I spy a bit more greenery here. Perrett Park, a wonderful park with breathtaking views. Well, even though the trees are growing, I can't really disagree with that. The views are pretty breathtaking. See, right across to the other side of the city there, can sort of, that's Clifton up in the background. Can't quite see the Clifton Suspension Bridge because those trees are in the way. But that's the view we're looking at. Absolutely wonderful. Perrett Park is one of the best places in Bristol to watch hot air balloons sail across the skies. But did you know? The first Bristol Balloon Fiesta took place in 1979. Hot air balloons can fly to amazing heights. The world record is over 21,000 metres. On the 19th of September 1783, a sheep, a duck and a chicken were the first passengers aboard a hot air balloon. The flight lasted about 8 minutes and all the animals reached the ground safely. Well, there you go. So Perrett Park is another lovely park in Bristol indeed. And even better when you've got such awesome views like this. Fantastic. Okay, well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the friends that I house shared with in Avonlea Road, Bedminster, Richard and Nigel. Well, of course, Richard and Nigel, they were both people that were involved in my very first Solitary Rambler films. It was one evening, I think Nigel must have been working because I know he used to do shifts at the time. Richard and I were talking at home, and I was just telling Richard about the fact that I'd had a video camera for a few years by that time, but I wasn't sort of making any major films with it. I was just going out shooting scenes here and there. But I told Richard that I'd had a long-term idea that I'd like to have done to make films, scripted films with actors in it. And I wanted to make them in the Wye Valley and Forest of Dean area. And Richard was very interested in what I was talking about. So he actually turned around to me and said, well, if you want to make a film, I'll be your cameraman. And I thought, wow, fantastic. So I also looked to Nigel as well. Nigel, I thought he would probably appear in some of my films if I made them. But the aforementioned, there was Martin I talked about, there was Jenny I talked about, and Michael in particular. Now, Michael was an actor. At that time, he was a member of a local drama group in Bristol. So I knew he would be an ideal person to have in my films, and certainly the first one I made. So I managed to get Richard doing the camera work. I also got Richard in front of the camera a little bit as well, and I got Michael to be the main actor apart from myself, and Jenny as well. So we actually filmed some of the scenes in Bristol inside Jenny's flat at the time. So they were the scenes that you originally see with Richard, Michael and Jenny. And then later on in that same film, the scenes that Richard didn't appear in, that was where Richard was behind the camera and I was being filmed with Michael and Jenny. So yeah, so it was all thanks to Richard that the Solitary Rambler actually got off the ground. It's because he volunteered to be my cameraman. So yeah, very happy memories. And here I am still making Solitary Rambler films today. Beyond Perrett Park, I crossed the busy Wells Road to take Sydenham Road opposite. So this part of Bristol is called Totterdown, and that's Arnos Vale Cemetery over there. So I'm not going to be walking into another cemetery today. I'm going along here because there's something very interesting just along here that I want to see. So this steep road here is Vale Street. Now Vale Street, the steepest part is a gradient of 1 in 3. And I believe it's the steepest residential street in the UK. And I can certainly believe it. What a street. Fantastic. Well, it really is a fantastic little street. But I must admit, if I was living on Vale Street, I'd have to doubly make sure that my brakes were working on my car. Wow. This part of Totterdown is known as 3 Lamps. Can't think why. That's another thing I can remember about Totterdown. Has some really good local pubs here. The Oxford for one. There's a few more along this way. Totterdown was actually always one of my favourite parts of Bristol. I know sort of in my latter years of living in Bristol, long after I'd moved out of Avonlea Road in Bedminster, and I was starting to live on my own by that time, Totterdown was actually the area in Bristol that I was looking to move. I reckon I must have viewed about half a dozen flats in this area. I think only one of them I actually liked, and that one wasn't far from Vale Street. But unfortunately, that particular flat was offered to someone else at the time. So I never got to live in Totterdown, sadly. But yeah, it always was, and I think still is, looking at it today, still is one of my favourite parts of Bristol. And I can remember going inside the New Found Out several times. My mum used to work with a lady, I think she lived there. Her name was Julie, I think, and her parents ran the pub. Can't remember what their names were, but I'm sure my mum helped her parents out with their books, because my mum was a bookkeeper. So although she had a full-time job doing accounts and bookkeeping, she also did a bit of bookkeeping on the side for other people. And the people that used to run the New Found Out, she did bookkeeping for. Yeah, happy memories. And here's another pub along here. I remember this one too. I only went in here once though. It was in 2002, the year before I left Bristol and moved to Derbyshire. I made the last Solitary Rambler film while I was living in Bristol. And although it was filmed in the Wye Valley and Forest of Dean again, one scene was shot in a pub in the middle of the forest, or outside a pub, should I say, but the interior scenes were shot inside here, the Shakespeare Inn. So, they do that in filming, don't they? But what it was, Nigel's sister appeared in that film, just as in a short role. She played the barmaid inside the pub when I was acting like I was absolutely drunk and she was trying to serve me or refused to serve me. That was Mandy, because she was working inside the Shakespeare at the time. So she asked if she could appear in one of my films, and that was an ideal role to give her. So yeah, even though the film was made in the Forest of Dean, the interior of the pub was shot there in the Shakespeare here in Totterdown. Here we go. Okay, let's move on then. So that was film number 9, called Saunter and Soodley. Yeah, the very last of those original Solitary Rambler films that I made that featured all my friends in Bristol. So of course it was after that I moved to Derbyshire, so all the films after that were made solely by me. Yeah, we got loads of these houses with different colours in Totterdown too. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, it's a shame that I never managed to rent a flat in Totterdown, but there you go. I could always see myself living in Totterdown. Nice part of Bristol. Descending St Luke's steps, I reached St Luke's Road, crossing over back into Victoria Park. Well, I'm back in Victoria Park. Absolutely wonderful. Although I'm on the opposite side to Victoria Park to where I was earlier. I was right over there when I was walking this morning. But I'm just heading back towards the main part of Bedminster now, which is where all the shops are. So, looking back on the 2.5 years that I lived in Avonlea Road, Bedminster, with Richard and Nigel, they were great times. I mean, we had our ups and downs, as you do when you live with people, but generally, they were great times. And as I say, the Solitary Rambler series started when I was living there. And if you look at those early films, the earliest films, when the credits roll at the start, the credits start with Avonlea Productions Presents. Now, I wonder where I got Avonlea Productions from. Well, it was me and Richard that started the series together, so it just seemed appropriate that I named it Avonlea Productions after the name of the street we were living in, Avonlea Road. So that's why it was called Avonlea Productions. So this is East Street. This is the main shopping area of Bedminster. And these, converted into shops now, these are former tobacco factories. East Street was always the heart of Bedminster, because I say this is where all the shops are. And when we lived in Avonlea Road, it was only about a 5-10 minute walk, so we had all the amenities in walking distance. It was great. Well, this is where East Street meets West Street. And I'm walking up British Road there, and that'll take me back to Avonlea Road, where I've parked my car. Okay. Here I am back at South Street Park then. Lovely. This is nearly where I started my walk this morning, because Avonlea Road's just over there, and that's where I've parked my car. Yeah, it's been lovely sort of reminiscing about this part of Bristol. Yeah, Bedminster where I did live, and Totterdown where I was hoping to live later. But yeah, it's been really good. So yeah, the years I lived in Bedminster with Richard and Nigel, we lived there between 1992 and 1995, so it was 2.5 years for me. And then we all moved out in 1995, and I'll explain why next time, because I'll show you where I was living after I lived in Bedminster.